three things here as we go forward with the program. First thing, we're going to have Bill come up and talk, and he'll give you some slides and his view of what it was like to create and grow Mustang Engineering. Then we're going to have Russ Capper come up, ask some questions, and third of all, we're going to have Russ lead the question and answer period with the audience. And I think one of the things that really works well is having the audience participate in the program and be able to ask Bill some questions. Let me talk to you a little bit about Bill Higgs. It's my pleasure to have him here tonight. He grew up in Cleveland and Denver. He graduated from West Point with a degree in engineering, and he was runner-up for the Rhodes Scholarship. He, after serving at West Point, or after West Point, served in the military as commander of a combat engineering company in Alaska. He also went to Ranger School and did a lot of other things, and very interesting things in the military. It wasn't too long before he decided to come back to Houston and get involved with engineering. So he worked for a couple of engineering companies for a while and decided he would like to see if he couldn't do it a little bit better than what he was experiencing. And he and two other co-founders got together and started Mustang Engineering. And it's a pretty amazing story. I've known Bill since our boys were in Boy Scouts together. We went to Philmont with kids. We went hiking in Iceland. We went hiking in Wind River in Wyoming. And we even went rafting down the Grand Canyon together. I would, the best way I think I can describe Bill is he's a Renaissance man. He can do almost anything and everything. It's just amazing. You look, he was an Eagle Scout when he was growing up. He was a remarkable soldier, commanding officer. Went through Ranger School. He even learned how to blow up nukes as part of the I think he even carried one on your back for one of the exercises. He's a star athlete. He was on the soccer team at West Point. He also was in wrestling and judo. He was the judo champion at West Point. He didn't take up golf until he was 50, but he's already has 2 holes in one, and usually wins the club championship every year. So quite an athlete. He's also an entrepreneur, as you'll hear tonight. I think it must run in the family because both of his kids have started up companies. Fab4 and Cielo who are sponsoring here tonight. He's a philanthropist. He's involved with the National Boy Scout organization. He's a very remarkable, upbeat, enthusiastic. That's part of, I think, what made Mustang culture. He's been CEO, but he's also been the vice president of marketing and sales. It's very unusual for an engineering person to go into sales and be the head of sales. But yeah, I don't know if any of you are here for Bob Metcalf. Bob Metcalf did the same thing. He was CEO, and then he became the marketing vice president. And it's a very important skill. They had to actually put Bill on some projects because he was bringing in so much business on the sales side. So that slowed him down. But anyway, please welcome Bill Higgs.
I'm not Bill Higgs.
We're going to do a short video. Can you hear that? We're going to do
A Mustanger is someone who's passionate about work, passionate about people, and passionate about life. I love to work with passionate people because they bring energy, enthusiasm, they're the spark plug of the project, they challenge everybody to be better. So I love passionate Mustangers. Live hard, work hard, play hard, and enjoy life.
Mustanger ialah seseorang yang sentiasa bersikap positif dalam apa jua keadaan. Mereka menganggap kesilapan dan kegagalan sebagai peluang untuk mereka memperbaiki diri kerana mereka tahu apa jua yang mereka lakukan, walau sebesar zarah sekalipun, mampu memberi kesan kepada kejayaan syarikat.
A Mustanger is somebody who seeks responsibility. They like to make progress and contribute to business. A Mustanger is somebody who looks to the future and does not dwell in the past.
En mustanger verdsetter teamarbeid høyt for å løse våre kunders utfordringer. En mustanger er opptatt av å gjøre sine kolleger gode for å oppnå et best mulig sluttresultat for våre kunder. En mustanger setter alltid det som er best for prosjektet, teamet og selskapet foran egne behov.
A Mustanger is someone who demonstrates our core values through actions in their lives in a visible way that others can see it and not just hear the words.
Un Mustanger es quien celebra los logros de su equipo de trabajo, los de la compañía, así como los de nuestros clientes. Estos 28 años de trabajo duro son motivo de gran celebración. Mustangers, celebremos que somos parte de esta gran compañía.
المستنجر هو شخص يحب التعلم، دائما متلهف العلم ويبحث عن المرشد الجيد.
A Mustanger is someone who practices servant leadership. They put people first. A Mustang servant leader has a commitment to growth, building community, and unleashing the energy of others.
Go Mustang. When I see that video 28 years later, I'm really humbled by what's happened. It's around the world. It's in people's language, and they're talking the language of Mustang. It's the essence of what it means to be a Mustanger translated into other languages, and it's pretty incredible. It's the essence of being a Mustanger that motivated me to write the book, The Mustang Story. Over the years, I get asked a lot of questions. How did you guys start a company with no investors? How did you do it during a downturn? How did you build a company from nothing? How did you grow operationally and in the process systems? How did you become leaders in sales and marketing? How did you do it in the highly competitive marketplace of Houston where there's hundreds of other engineering firms vying for the same work? Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you everything about how to do that, but it's in the book. So you're going to have to get the book. That's my sales pitch for tonight. But really what I want to do is I want to reveal one key thing that we discovered at Mustang. It wasn't what we started out to do, but it's something that really changed how we grew Mustang. And once Paul, Felix, and I figured out what it was, we jumped on it and we rode it as far as we could. And that secret is culture. Today, I'm going to try and demystify culture because Steve Knowles was second generation, Michelle McNichol is third generation of leading Mustang, and they've demystified it and said, you don't need Paul, Bill, and Felix. You can do it. Back when I got out of the Army, it was 1979, and the phrase in the industry was drive fast and freeze a Yankee. We were in a boom time. We were hiring everybody that we could. Then the downturn hit in 82. It's the start of an 8-year downturn. And just a few years in, the oil companies cut 30% of their folks, and it just rippled down through the entire industry. And the catchphrase was stay alive till 85. There's probably some people in here that remember that. Well, in 85 and 86, they cut another 20%, and that rippled down in the industry. And the catchphrase was, it'll be heaven in 87. And you get the idea. The hope springs eternal in the human breast. You're not going to get us down. We know eventually that price is going to turn and it's going to change. But there were foreclosures on every street. 1,200 banks went under. Friends of ours had to move out of the state to find a job, and it was absolutely horrible in Houston in the 80s during that downturn. over 500,000 jobs disappeared. When I got out of the Army, the engineering firm that I went into was doing offshore platforms, 120 people. Within 6 months, it was down to 35 people. And I thought, I'm going to have to go back in the Army. I'm going to join Joe, one of my classmates up here. Got to go back in the Army. But 3 guys quit and started another company, so I jumped over to it. And what we were doing was these small offshore platforms. The size platform we did, if you took that and multiplied it by 40, that's how big they were. These are small, fixed platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. The yellow is a jacket, and the green is piles that go through the jacket down into the mud. And then the blue is the deck. You can see the deck over there to the right sitting on a barge. The deck is lifted up and stuck on top of those piles. And you see the legs are real long. What that's doing is keeping everything out of the hurricane wave that comes through. So sort of simple, but a lot of complex technology in it. So the company I joined, we went from 0 people to 120, but we were working for independent oil companies. So a Seagull Oil, or you might remember T. Boone's Pickens had Mesa Petroleum. So we were working for these independents, and we were able to grow up to 120 people. But then they ran out of work, and the oil price continued to fluctuate between $5 and $35, and you didn't know what it was going to be. So what we want to do, we said, man, this is no fun. We've got to figure out how to change this. So Paul Felix and I, in 1987, decided to go out and start Mustang Engineering. What we had been doing is we had reduced the scope for doing these offshore platforms. And Paul Felix and I thought we had squeezed the handoffs between engineering and purchasing and construction. And we thought that we had a better mousetrap how to do those projects for less hours than the competitors. So we felt that we could keep 10 to 15 people busy long term and not go in these ups and downs and just stay at a nice small company. Our vision, and we say it up here, our vision was to provide a quality engineering and project management company. And we felt that if we could do that, we would be able to stay long term. My job was go to the bankers and get cash flow financing so we can start this company. So we wrote a business plan. I went to the bankers. They tried not to laugh in our face because they were writing off millions of dollars every week. No way we're going to get cash flow financing. Our CPA, who was a friend of Felix, said, you're crazy. Do not start a company right now. In our pickup trucks, we were going to 3 engineering firms doing offshore oil platforms and buying furniture at 10 cents on the dollar because they were closing. So we were finding some resources, but they said, you're crazy. It's not a good time to start. We haven't hit the bottom yet. But we love the offshore industry. We like that technology, and we felt we could level out those ups and downs. But what we wanted was not what we really needed. You've now heard the vision statement to create a management company. 12 years after we started, we were the largest engineering firm in Houston at 1,200 people. We were in 16 countries, and we had just sold to the Wood Group. We were sitting down with second-generation leadership, and we said, we need to write down what the vision is of this company, because we didn't have one, now 12 years later. Had a leadership team. Charles Wilds is out there. I saw him tonight. He was teaching leadership to our second generation, and the light bulb went off in Steve Knoll's head at one of the meetings, and these are the words that he wrote down. Our quest is to embody a culture that inspires super motivated people to make heroes of clients, vendors, partners, and Mustangers. Way different than what we started out trying to do. Quest meant that we were never going to be done, and you heard that in the video. People are still talking about this quest, and they're working to put that around the world. It turns out that building a culture should have been our vision when we started, because everything that we accomplished derived from the culture that we created. My senior year at West Point, I took a management class, and the book was by Peter F. Drucker. I loved that book. We studied a lot of things. I took that book with me, and when I was a company commander of a combat engineer company in the 1st Cav, I used that book because it had some good leadership traits in it. But it wasn't until Jenny Buchholz was working marketing for me that I learned about this quote from Peter F. Drucker. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it totally blew my mind. I had no idea. Hello, how you doing up there? One of Stephanie's girlfriends. But what was so cool about that quote is I knew this was the guru, and this guy was all about process. And culture is sort of like touchy-feely stuff. I just couldn't believe that he would have said that. What happened, though, is we won the hydrocarbon industry's award for visionary leadership for our lifetime career. We won that in 2004, and at the same time, we were labeled by Upstream magazine as Kings of Culture. We did not pay for that. That came from them. They wrote it. They took the picture, and they said, you are the Kings of Culture in the upstream world. Quite a change from where we started, trying to do 10 or 15 people. So what I want to do today is talk about culture and building teams. And culture is the heart and soul of teams, so we should have some fun while we're doing that. This is a quote that I really like. The thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, and then habits create your destiny. And I'm going to talk about some of the actions you need to take to create a culture. But in order to have habits and to stay with those habits, you have to have a lot of passion. It takes passion to keep those habits going and actually change how people react. So here we go. Here's how we did it. The first step is that you've got to get everyone better connected in the company, top to bottom. And this means that you got to do some mingling. So somebody brings in a birthday cake and you get around a conference table and you have birthday cake and you talk. And the CEO is there and the drafters there and the secretary and the engineers. But you're getting them to talk. You're going to picnics. You're having fun activities. And what I call this is silo busting in the organization. So we got structural guys talking to electrical guys. And so now they know what each other needs to be doing. Department lines will start to fuzz a little bit, and the management to worker lines are going to start to fuzz. I like to give an example of that. Like my daughter does these jackets. So I said, hey, I'm going to go to a West Point function. You're going to be with my classmate. I need a black and gold one. So I order it from her, and she sends it to me. And when I put this thing on, and I mean, I've been talking to this girl for 30 years. She's 30 years old. She didn't talk in the first year, but she's talked a lot since then. So I get this coat from my daughter, and it's gold and black, and I wanted black and gold. And you say, well, there's got to be some type of a communication problem here. And what I call it, and Dick Wesley's out there, and he'll be very familiar with this, is I call this part of the dunce syndrome. Okay, so what's happened is somewhere in this communication chain, it got to gold and black. It's like, what's going on here? Something happened in your purchasing group? Your tailors not know what they're doing? Why didn't somebody question this? Well, she actually does work for theater stars and people like that. Maybe somebody really did want a gold jacket. But I can tell you, and there's some very experienced people out here in the audience, that I've seen multi-million-dollar mistakes made, and it was as simple as black and gold. When you go and find out what the communication problem was, it was somebody not asking the question, and it was multi-million-dollar. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about with the silo busting and getting people to communicate. You've got to break the dunce syndrome. Another one of my favorite ones, and I really like to put this on pointy-headed engineers because it fits. But the engineer designs a pump, throws it over to the silo of purchasing. Purchasing looks at it and goes, this is made out of unobtainium. There isn't one of these pumps in the entire industry. So he's looking over at the engineer, and in his mind, he's seen that engineer with that dunce cap on. Okay, the engineer hears from purchasing, hey, this is unobtainium. I can't get this thing anywhere. And so the engineer is looking at purchasing like they've got a dunce cap on. But it's communication. If they'd gotten together early and said, this is a weird process, I'm going to need a weird pump, and purchasing and engineering worked it together, they would have gotten that pump. So I truly believe that all problems are communication problems. And what we have to do is work the communications. And I need to put this coat back or my daughter will kill me. But in order to get the communications figured out, you have to bust the silos and you have to cross-fertilize across those silos to where people will talk. And one of the best ways is to get them together outside of work and provide free space to where they can just bounce into each other. And then they'll say, this person's really good, even though they're in HR. I think I could get my problem solved with my insurance because they actually can walk and talk. So right now, you're probably thinking, this dude's a little bit crazy because he'll wear a dunce cap in front of you guys. And you go, I could never do that. And I really believe that you can't do it until you have a passion for creating a culture that's going to change how your team performs. And once you have that passion, you can do it. My wife's out here. She'll tell you, I never dressed up except for Halloween until I got to Mustang Engineering. And what we did is we had a 1950s themed party, and a number of groups got together to do lip syncs. So we had Gladys Knight and the Pips, and it was a drafter, it was a head of HR, it was an engineer, it was a young gun, one of the recent graduates. It was totally a cross-fertilized team that practiced this lip sync. The owners, we did leader of the pack. So the three guys were on Hot Wheels, torquing around while our wives were dancing in poodle skirts. We were able to get everybody to get up on that dance floor and dance until the place closed down. And we did a video of it. It starts to echo when I get in this space right here, so I have to watch it. It was so much fun that the next 3 weeks at Mustang, we would show the video at lunch, we would talk to people, and you could just see that there was more energy in the office, and people were talking and they were laughing. But we were getting more work out the door. And I'm going, oh, this is sort of cool. Maybe we should do something about this a little bit more. Because people were smiling and they were talking. And what we were doing is we were spinning attitudes up. And we were in a downturn just like this one at that time. We were spinning the attitudes of people up. And people, because of that, they had gotten out of their sort of their shell and their safe system. And I'm talking about engineers. Engineers have a personality like right above a CPA. Okay? And so we got engineers to smile and talk to each other and participate and get involved. So this was not easy. It's like, I feel bad for Michelle. She has thousands of these engineers, and she has to get them to talk to each other. So that's step one, is you get this going, and then you assign some rabble-rousers. So that's the term we use, is rabble-rousers, cheerleaders, to keep that going, keep those activities going, and make it a habit. And then you go to step two. Step two is where you're creating the sense of team. And so we did things like we got a logo, we had mottos, we got a banner. Because we're in Texas, we had to have a hand sign. Every college has a hand sign, so we had our hoof sign. And what we wanted to do was, the horse that we selected was on one foot. So it's like this. And it's like, it's going to move, especially like me, I have no balance left. It's going to move. And what we wanted people to understand is everything's going to continuously change. And so we wanted to embrace change and do it that way. I have to digress and tell you about how we got the saying, Mustang will satisfy you. In that first year, we got to a point where there were no offshore oil platforms at all. So we chased Houston bus maintenance facility for Metro. And we ended up being one of the last 4 people we were going to present right before lunch. And I knew that these people didn't even want to hear about us because we were an offshore engineering company. And they had all these companies that had worked for them before. And so there were only 4 of them left. And I wanted to break that dynamic. So I got some Snickers bars. And I walked over into their area, and we got to be safe. So you got to catch these things. Hopefully there's some college kids out there that can do that. So, so I went out. I got to give one to Steve. So I went over into their area, and in front of each person on the board, I laid down a big Snickers bar. And I said, I want you listening to us, because you're going to hear about a company that's going to take care of you, and it's going to be focused on you. And I don't want you thinking about lunch while we're talking to you. So I work my way down, and I get the last person. It's a lady. It's a lady who's 3 months pregnant, not showing. Give her this big Snickers bar, and I put a little one down. I said, this is for your little one. And the board just cracked up. They said, these guys know everything. And once you get people laughing and smiling and doing something, they're moving. And then if you can change where that movement's going, you can change the whole dynamic. They started laughing. I said, we do not want to work for Metro because we don't want to do all your dumb paperwork. It's a government company. Oh, good catch. Thanks a lot. And we said, your paperwork will kill us because all we do is we crank projects and we crank them faster than anybody else. But, said, but we will do them safer than you've ever done them before. And we got into a conversation and they said, well, this is what we could do where we sort of do the paperwork for you, and if you'll take care of this stuff. By the time we were done, we had figured out how to get out of that work we didn't want to do and get their work. We won the project, put our entire drafting room down there through the winter, and Mustang might not be here today if we hadn't done that, because that was the first winter. So we always do Snickers bars at everything. Michelle still does it. And it's to be other-oriented. We want to remind Mustangers, be other-oriented. Make heroes in what you're trying to do. So some of this may sound a little hokey. You might say, hey, we can't do that. But my son has started a company, Fab Fours. And he's created a team. They call themselves Pirates. That's him up there dressed like a pirate. So apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Steve knows him. But we're pirates, and we're going to take over the aftermarket bumper industry, and then we're going to share the bounty with all of our people. So when he's got everybody in a group and he's pepping them up and figure out what we're going to do, he'll raise his right hand and they'll yell, "Arg!" And it's like they're sitting on the edge of their chairs. I've been there. They're waiting for him to raise his hand up so that they can all yell, "Arg!" And they're a team. There's no doubt about it that they're a team. One of the things was doing lean training, and he did one of these things, "Arg!" and they're all pirates, and the lady that's head of engineering stood up and said, "Well, what do I?" I said, "Winch!" They all yelled, "Winch!" I go, that's not good. But she loved it. She told it because she was part of that team, and they love this pirate thing. So it can be done. You don't have to have a horse. You just have to pick something that people can get around and change the dynamic of what you're doing within the company. Those logos and mottos, we'd put them on trinkets and things, and we'd get them into kids' toy boxes. This past couple of days, I've met Mustangers who grew up with those toys in their toy box, who graduated from UT, and now they're working at Mustang. And he said, "Yeah, I've got all this stuff. I might as well go to that company and work." But it was also, they could really recycle it with their kids, so it was all pretty good. But what the people are seeing when they're getting that stuff is that the management team thinks they're more important than clients, because normally all that stuff goes to clients. So they're feeling that, no, they really think I'm important. They're taking care of me. They're taking care of my family. So when you dress up to hand out checks, like you're seeing here, that's me as the Grinch up here. Here I'm handing out checks, but I met today Ed Palmer. Ed Palmer is head of process engineering. I was handing out checks in a stormtrooper uniform. And I barged in his door. Well, he was on speakerphone with a client, with two engineers there. He's, "What?" And the client says, "What's going on? What's going on?" I says, "The stormtrooper's in here handing me a paycheck." But when people go home and they talk to their family and say, "You won't believe what happened to me today. A stormtrooper came in and handed me a paycheck," what you're doing is you're creating memories, and you're creating something that the family can latch onto. And you're now getting firmly in what we used to affectionately call Bill's World. You're now in Bill's World. And Steve had to deal with Bill's World probably a little bit too much. But in Bill's World, all clients are nice and give you all the work you want, and your engineers do everything you want on time. It's a really nice place, very nice place. Once you have this stuff going on, the culture is now not going from the top down. The culture is coming from the bottom up. People want it. They're loving it. They're feeling it. And what you want is when a new person comes in, the people that are right around that person are sucking them in on day one and saying, "This is our culture. This is how we act. This is what we do." And so you as a leadership team, you're not having to drive that. You're providing the space for it. And now your people are doing it. So we move on to step 3. Step 3 of creating an unbeatable culture. So now you got rabble-rousers keeping step 2 going and step 1 going. That's been 6 months now. We're going to do step 3 is hard copy communication. And hard copy communication, to me, that's what I call internal sales. So I was in 2 companies that went through major downturns, went from 120 people to 30 or 20 people. And when I would be at the coffee bar in those companies, it seemed like that's where all the negative stuff would start. They'd say, hey, EDG just got this new project. Think they're hiring over there? Hey, this company got that project. Hey, what have we gotten? And you could spiral down at that coffee bar from the conversation that started. So what I wanted to do, and what Mustang still does, is you start blasting things up around the coffee bar. Pictures of what happened, pictures of stuff that's coming up. And you give positive things for people to talk about because they want to. And that'll spiral them up when they come from that coffee bar out. And I think a lot of what I do there is remember the dunce cap. If you don't give them something positive to talk about, they're going to be talking about that engineer designing with unobtainium. They're going to be talking about the management team. You'll put a memo out and they'll say, okay, we know it means the opposite of what they've written. How do we figure out what that is? You don't want them doing that. You want them believing in the management team. We also did a monthly newsletter, and we'd give it to all our people, but we snail mailed it home. And you'd be amazed that the spouse would read everything in that newsletter. If their kid was in one of the pictures, they'd show it to their kid. Then what happened, they would see an activity coming up like a skating party, and the pressure was on the Mustanger, hey, we want to go to that skating party. Now you've changed. You were spiraling people up at work. Now you're starting to do some things at the house, and you're really starting to change the dynamic. What happened to us a number of times at Christmas parties is a spouse would come up and they'd say, I want you looking at me. I said, okay, I'm looking at you. My spouse has changed since they came to Mustang Engineering. They're happier when they go to work. They're happier when they come home. They're engaging more with the kids. They want to go to church on Sunday. They've got more energy. And they said, we want you to keep it up. Well, we were growing. We're doing double-digit growth every year. They said, we don't care if you're growing double-digit. Keep it up. Figure out how to do that. So there's a lot of pressure on us, but we knew it was a different horse that we were trying to ride. Lastly, we would do a one-page newsletter that would go out to clients because they're starving for information. Give them some information about 3 times a year. What we wanted to do, and this is key, is to celebrate everything you want to see more of. In the Army, we used to say, energy and enthusiasm is a force multiplier. And there's no doubt that it is a force multiplier. You're building it up, but it's like piling sand. As soon as you stop putting that energy in, it's going to dissipate. And you'll go back to being like any other engineering firm in Houston. The gung-ho training and teaming culture would build leaders of character all the way down, every level in the organization. And once you've built leaders of character and those core values are going all the way through the organization, you're going to create what I call a delta in performance. So all these 100 engineering firms pull from the same pool of talent in Houston. So it's going to be a bell-shaped curve of people. No matter how good we are at hiring, we had what we called Operation Horse Thief. Identify the horses in other companies, and we'll go steal them. So whenever we got a new guy, I would say, who's your favorite electrical engineer? Because who can ever talk to an electrical engineer? But we would go get them. But what you wanted to do was once you had those people, and with this culture, if we could shift our people to a little bit better performance because of their attitudes and how they were working and talking and communicating, now we're totally differentiated from the rest of the industry. And that ended up being evident in like our benchmarks for our engineering per project. We would do it for 30 or 40% less man hours than anybody else. But our total installed cost for the project was 30% less. So the client, this is Bill's world, every 4th project's free. So you might as well give us 4 in a row. But don't use that, Michelle. The key thing, though, was that this had to become part of the fabric of the company. It had to be something that was just always there. So it didn't matter how big you got, or if you got into another country, or you opened another office. It's in the fabric. You can see here, That's Paul Redmond dancing with the California Raisin. He was CEO before Steve Knowles. And he's an engineer. He's like a real engineer. And you got him up there dancing with the California Raisin. Those are young guns. Those are like first-year graduates dressed up as Smurfs at like one of the anniversary parties. But across time, we developed unbelievable loyalty in an industry where when we started, there was no loyalty. If you finished a job, you were out the door. We had that loyalty, and you needed it because the oil price always goes back up. And when it goes back up, everybody's going to come and try and steal your people from you. So having that loyalty allowed them to say, no, I'm not going. When somebody would say they were going, their kid would say, no, you're not going. And we had kids turn people around. We found that, and this is a very important point right here, we found that our values of getting things right the first time, quality delivered on time, taking care of people, integrity, innovation, you name it, easily permeated through the entire organization because of this win-win culture. So as a leadership team, we demonstrated those core values. The leaders at every level who had grown up in that Mustang thing demonstrated those values, and they just permeated. The clients could see it and feel it. The vendors could see it and feel it. So after 3 months of working through the hard copy and assigning a champion to it, we're going into step 4. And step 4 is pulling your clients in. And this is almost like Starbucks, that you want them to see the experience of your company and see that that experience is different. But this is tough. Has anybody heard of a CLM? It's not a boy. It's called like a buoy, B-U-O-I. It's not one of those. CLM is a career-limiting move. No oil company dude wants to do a career-limiting move. A career-limiting move would be that you give a project to Mustang, some dorky little company, and it goes wrong. And then everybody says, why didn't you give it to Brown and Root or to Fluor or to Bechtel? And that dude, in the downturn, he's now lost his job with the oil company. That was a career-limiting move. So no client wants to experience that, but we wanted to suck them in. We had clients from BP, Exxon, Conoco, Mobil. We had them wearing hats. We had them dressing up for monthly reviews. Steve's laughing because he knows Tom Hall. I mean, we had this guy wearing hats. And he's like a head guy at Mobil. But everybody on the team would say, that dude's real. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to support him. I love this picture. This is at our chili cook-off. And they just had a chili cook-off again last week. This is Nordic themed because this team did the first Gulf of Mexico platform to go into the North Sea. So a front-end design had been done. It didn't make the hurdles. They came to us and said, can you cut 30% out of this project by making it a Gulf of Mexico type platform? So they had a Nordic theme. This guy on the left, he's wearing a mop for hair. That's the BP client. I said, you're wearing your mop for hair. He says, for $300 million, I'll wear it every day for a year. Okay? Those were the types of monies that they were seeing being saved on their project. But that team that was supporting him, we were having to build this stuff in the UK. We wanted to build it the way we did it on the Gulf Coast, but do it in the UK. So we needed the team pulling together, and they pulled together behind this guy. Step 5 is to suck your suppliers in. So we would invite them to shrimp boils. We'd invite them to team building activities so the suppliers could see how we worked as a unit. Clients and suppliers are in hundreds of meetings throughout the industry, and our name would be brought up positively in all kinds of different venues. They all understood our value proposition and could talk about the experience of working with Mustang. We'd also get feedback if one of our people wasn't performing like a Mustanger because it became the term. Is that person a Mustanger? Oh, if they're a Mustanger, we know we can trust them. So the reputation built by the culture made others want to come and try it. Remember back to thoughts become actions, become habits, become destiny. This is the destiny you're working for, where people are talking about you positively at impromptu moments throughout the world, and that's where we got to. Once you have that, the world changes. Poof! You're now a culture Merlin. You can accomplish anything. You can actually find unobtainium. You can make that pump. You can do all kinds of things because you've changed the dynamic and how people are working with you. And what I want to do is create thousands of culture Merlins around the world. The results for Mustang, we were going to sell the company in 99, 2000, and we were working with Chase. And we said, Chase, we've got to go tell our people that we're going to sell this company. Do not tell your people you're going to sell the company, because all the good people are going to leave, and the clients are going to stop giving you work. That's just the way Houston operates. So we said, well, we've got to do it. So we're going to call it our Adopt a Parent program, because we're like this teenager. We're sort of rowdy, don't really know how to drive the car, but it's a cool car. And so we needed this parent. And what we did is we did a brochure, and on a Monday morning, we had 25 of our managers in there. I brought my pastor from church to say a prayer, because this could have been the end of Mustang, because it could go just like Chase wanted. We said a prayer, got everybody engaged, handed the pamphlets out. They went and handed the pamphlets out to their people. The first time anybody was learning about it was in these meetings. Raytheon had bought Litwin. We ended up with like 300 Litwin people because it was a really horrible purchase. I'm in the meeting with all the ex-Litwin people, and a guy stands up and says, Bill, what are we allowed to say outside of Mustang about this Adopt a Parent program? And I said, well, if you think it's the greatest thing in the world, start calling everybody you know and tell them this is really cool. This is what we're doing. If you think it's horrible and it's going to be like when Raytheon bought you, go home and sleep on it overnight and read this brochure again. Come in the morning. If you got some questions, get those questions answered. If by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning you think it's the absolute worst idea, go tell everybody it's the worst idea you've ever heard. But we're going to go forward with it. The next day, we started rolling it out to clients, and I went into one of our conference rooms. BP had bought Amoco. We were doing this mica project, and Exxon was on it, and Exxon had bought Mobil. And these engineers were meeting each other in our conference room for like the first time. I handed out all these brochures, told them what we were doing. The Mobil guy said, can you talk to Exxon about doing one of these brochures on what we just went through? Because we have no idea who's in charge. By Thursday, it had gone around the world. It was a total non-event. Everybody was back to work. We were growing. Within 4 months, we had added 200 people. We had added some of the best projects in the industry. And we were working on this one for ExxonMobil. Huge project. Remember that little structure that we started out doing? This thing's in 7,000 foot of water. It's world class. It's the biggest thing. That's an 800-foot can that's bobbing and floating. Bobbing and floating really gently. It's very nice. It's going to be good. 4 months into this, we were chasing this suite of projects. So this was a BP suite of projects, but their equal partner on one of them was Shell. Their equal partner on another one was Chevron. Their equal partner on another one was Exxon. It was like, this was the who's who of the offshore industry. Fluor and Brown and Root had a total strategy of how to win these projects that year. Total focus. They could zipper each one of those clients, Shell, Exxon, BP. They could zipper them from the boardroom to the engineer. They had a strategy to nail all of it. We went after it with no strategy. But we were good. We were really good at what we did, and we ended up winning it. And I'm not sure why, but Redmond sent me over to go sign the contract. And I go into this room, and there's like 30 BP people in there, and it's just me. I wonder why they picked us. So we were both saying some words. I asked the project manager, I said, why did you pick us? And I'd like to read to you the response. He said, we felt that any company that won this series of projects would have to hire significantly. And Mustang's culture had proven that we could hire, assimilate, and produce great teams better than anyone else in the industry. Peter F. Drucker fell out of his chair right there. He said, I told you, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's exactly what we did to Fluor and Brown and Root. Unbelievable set of projects. And while we were for sale, we actually sold and closed it like 4 months after winning these projects. While we were for sale, we won work in every one of our sectors that we knew we were going to have to double in the 15 months after the sale. Unbelievable story. Unbelievable story. So that's the destiny that you're trying to create. Well, what's happened since then? Steve ran it for a while. Michelle's in charge of it now. This must all be Michelle up here. This was the December Offshore magazine. I hope I've got what's coming up. So on the Offshore magazine for 2015, they had the 5 top projects in the world for upstream. 2 of them were done by Mustang, the top sides and the integration. One was for Chevron, semi-submersible, like the one that Michelle was on, Thunder Horse. This one over here is a spar. We did 8 of the first 9 spars, but we're still working for Anadarko and taking care of them. In that same magazine, in the back of it, there's a Beyond the Horizon article that I wrote on how to bust silos and come out of downturns stronger. What you're seeing there, that's the legacy of Mustang as it's come forward. We're still doing the best projects in the industry. We're resilient, and we're built to weather any storm. With that, I'd like to open it to questions. That was the culture of Mustang. Thank you.